Everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of No Bullshit Talks. And I'm super pleased to be joined here today by Brittany Dixon. And Brittany, you are a business systems strategist, you're a productivity guru, and you basically seem like the most organized person in the world, right?
I mean, in most ways, yes.
I think it's a pretty good intro of what you do.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for having me today.
I know, I'm super excited to hear all about these productivity hacks. I feel like this is something that everyone needs more time in their lives. So, I mean, do you just deal with really super stressed people all the time? I feel like that's what you must get.
Basically, yeah. Most of my people, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to share my screen, but don't look at the 77 tabs I have open and like the documents everywhere. The people that are just like, I have stuff in like 7,000 places and I can never find anything. And I work 17 hours a day. So yes, basically.
Does that stress not rub off on you though? Like, I feel like everyone around you being like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. I've got this much to do. Yeah. It must be like, oh, just stay away from me. I don't need the stress.
Yeah. So it's funny. I can actually process other people's stress when it comes to this stuff. And I normally do really well with mine unless there's like external circumstances that burst the bubble. So like, current world affairs, like piling up on top of said busy schedule. But yeah, normally I can handle it pretty well. I like just put my stuff on the back burner and I'm like, all right, let's fix it. Let's do it.
So tell me exactly what you do, like on a day-to-day basis. I feel like a business systems strategist is quite like an obscure but funky title. You could be like making buildings or like whatever by the sound of that, but obviously I know you don't. Yeah. But for the people listening who are like, what the hell is that? Like, do you want to run me through exactly what you do?
Totally. Okay. So you didn't start a business to run a business, but you have to deal with all that back end stuff to make that happen, right? So you started your business because you were good at something and someone is going to pay you for that. But you have to do all of the task management, project management, time management, sending invoices, sending proposals, onboarding clients, managing client projects, like all of those back end moving pieces. I help you come in and set up systems to make that so much more streamlined and make it faster for you to get all of that stuff done so that you can actually focus on your clients and who you're serving. So I deal a lot with setting up CRM systems, so customer relationship management systems to keep track of your clients and your leads. I do a lot with Asana and setting up project and task management hubs. And I also do a lot with just the general client onboarding and offboarding experience. So it's really from the time they become a lead until you're done with their project. But even just the back-end productivity of like digital clutter and keeping up with email and having a system to manage that. It's all the back-end moving pieces that everyone hates dealing with, but they have to run a business.
You've just named some of the most crucial things in my business, honestly. You just named like the CRM, and we'll get on to like which CRM is your favorite and why, I guess. Like a CRM is like, I feel like it was kind of crazy the fact that a few years ago I wasn't using a CRM. I don't even know how that's possible to not use one. I guess like for people listening who don't know what CRM is and you're running a business, go Google it right now and understand what it is, because it will change your life. Like you cannot.
That is honestly, I think, one of the biggest things people are missing as business owners, because they're like, oh, it's just me, I don't need that. But how many people do we interact with on a daily basis? Like in the DMs and on Facebook and Instagram and commenting and emails, like there's no freaking way you can keep up with that in your head. So when I put a CRM in place, you can tell you leave money on the table without one. So go get a CRM right now.
How many times has any business owner forgotten to reply to someone? Like, oh my God, I forgot. Even if it's like super important, you're just doing with so many things. Like you just listed like about 10 people's jobs, for example, and you just touching the surface. So like you're dealing with so much stuff every day, you forget like, oh my God, I forgot to reply to that person. And then by the time you reply to them, they're like, oh, sorry, I went with someone else because they just replied quicker. And you're like, and that happens so much. And having 100%. A CRM changes 100%. That. And I think that's it. And you said Asana. We are so pro Asana. Like without Asana, the business would not exist. Like everything is in there for years and years and years. Every file that our team has ever sent to each other, we can just type it in and we can find it from like years ago. It's amazing. Like, and the integrations is endless. So we have it like integrating with like Zendesk, we have it integrating with all these other things, and so like we can have support tickets go straight into the project management software. It's amazing. So I think what you've just said is like, and it's taken me years to get there, but if I had someone like you setting that up from the get-go, oh my god, my life would have been so much better. Like so much better.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's what I want to do. I actually have a group coaching like mastermind program called Hustle to Flow that really is for that newer entrepreneur that doesn't know all of this stuff. They can't afford to invest for me to come and do it for them, but they need to learn these things. And I put that in place because I saw so many business owners not doing these things, and they get 2-3 years in and they get burnt out because it's so much stuff. Like you wear so many hats in a business, like, and then you go from doing marketing and social media and creating content. And then you're like, oh, wait, let me go do some invoicing. Forgot to do that to get paid. Oh, now I have to onboard a new client. Like we have to make it so much more streamlined and make it work smarter, not harder, because there's so many business owners that fail and quit because they don't have this stuff in place. And if they just take a little bit of time to put some systems in place, they could scale their business really fast.
And I think that's it. Like it does take time. And that's the problem. Every business owner thinks they have no time because they don't have any time. But like, you know, they don't realize that investing that bit of time into this initial stuff will save you endless hours of time later to actually make money. And I think that's the thing that people don't get. You need to invest the time to make the time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there's a graphic out there. It's like a bicycle that has square tires. And then there's like, I'm too busy, I don't have time. And then you have the bicycle with the circle tires. And they're like, I made some time and now I can work smarter, not harder. Like that's exactly how business owners operate. And what I try to get them to see is if we can create even a sauna and like a central hub for everything you have to do, I can save you at least 5 hours a week by getting that organized and getting it into one spot. And then not to mention the fact you're going to hit your goals faster because you're actually working on tasks instead of like, oh, wait, where did I put that? I can't find that. What am I supposed to be working on today? So it's an investment of time up front, but it's like a rinse and repeat thing. So once you put one system in place and you start thinking in systems, then it's just rinse and repeat next time and rinse and repeat and then make it better. So it's like that catch-22, right? Like I don't have time, but I need systems. If you invest that time, it will pay off 100%.
So if for you're dealing with like a whole range of different entrepreneurs, what would you say are the most common mistakes that they do when they try to start a business?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest one is having that like really clear big picture plan. I see too many business owners that I kind of equate it to going on a road trip, right? Like if you don't have an end destination in mind, like you're just kind of going all over the place, you're turning, sightseeing, which sounds great for a road trip, not the most sustainable way to build a business. And we're going to take twists and turns and pivots when we're in business and we have a plan. But I think having that like big picture vision and why you're doing it, you're going to need that because it's going to get really freaking hard. And if you can't go back to that and that why is not strong enough, you will quit. I'm speaking from experience. I almost quit numerous times because I'm like, this shit is hard. Like nobody tells you how hard this is. And if you don't have that vision, it's almost a game over kind of situation. The other thing I will say is I see people investing in all the software because their friends told them to download the thing. Somebody's like, oh yeah, I signed up for Trello. And then I also signed up for Asana and I've got a ClickUp account. Somebody else told me to try Notion. Then I have stuff in 15 different places. I'm paying for all of them because I forgot to shut off the reoccurring fee on my credit card. So that's another thing that I see. And I do a systems audit with almost every one of my clients. I'm like, what can we get rid of? What are you paying for that you don't need? What can we combine? Like that's a huge, huge problem I see, especially in the online space for sure. And then I think just not managing time, which sounds super basic, but we all need to manage our time better and fit the things in that we want to do versus like trying to do 1,000 things in this tiny little block of time that aren't actually moving things forward. So again, doing a time audit. Where are you spending your time? Are you actually blocking out time for what's important? Are you building a lifestyle that your business fits in, or a business that you then have to cram your lifestyle into? So really just doing that time audit and making sure you have time for the stuff that's most important to you. So I would say those are probably the top 3 that I run into, which sounds super basic, right? Like, have a plan, don't invest in all the software up front, and make sure that you're managing your time. That's really it.
I mean, it does sound basic, but it's still not that easy. So we do, we use time tracking software as well. And I have to go through the timesheets all the time just to make sure that we are being efficient, because it's so easy just to kind of get suckered into different things. And I suddenly look back at my own timesheets and I'm like, I spend that much time doing that. That is crazy. And the same with the software. I've totally fallen down that hole, and I get attracted to the Black Friday discounts. And they totally work.
You're like, but it's on sale for life. I have to buy it. Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah, that's crazy.
I sign up to those yearly ones, and then like it comes around to like October, and I still haven't used it, and I'm just like, this is so bad. Yeah. But I do like a yearly audit of my software now because of that reason, and I think it's so important just to keep on top of things. But it's so, you've got so many things to think about. That is the last thing you do. But like you said, all those little things, again, it took me years to kind of work that out and realize I need to do that. I was spending like so much money on like domains, because like buying them here and there, like little things like that. They're only like 10, 20 pounds or dollars, right? And it's like, you just think, oh, that's nothing. But then you need to buy like 70 of them. It becomes a bit of a pop.
Starts to add up very quickly. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And I've created this new workshop that I did. It's called Days by Design. And I'm just seeing so many people like cram lifestyle into their schedule, and not like they're basically, their business comes first, right? Which is, it's important because it's making you money, it's serving your clients, but you can't run yourself in the ground. I tell people that systems are self-care for your business, because if you don't have those in place, you are going to burn out at some point, right? Maybe you can make it 2.5, 3 years. That's typically the point that people are like, they're on or off, right? They're like, okay, no, I can't do this anymore. But you have to step back and look at your business from like that 30,000 foot view and not be in the weeds to make better decisions. And I just think so many people just get so caught up in it. They're like, I don't have time to step back and look at the big picture. But it's almost like when you slow down, you can speed up so much faster. So I highly encourage like taking a CEO day, and like really diving into the problems and seeing how we can fix them.
Oh, I like that. CEO day. I need to make those. That sounds great. I should have one like every week.
CEO day every single month. I'm trying to get them weekly. There's still too much on my calendar right now to do that. But yeah, I try and do a monthly where I'm working on the business and like growing and like figuring out problems and things like that, versus like client work constantly. And it's been a game changer. So I highly suggest, and put it on your calendar, because if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't happen. If it goes to the bottom of the list, and put it on repeat so that it comes up every single month.
I love that. I'm going to try doing that. I feel like it's so useful. And like you're saying, working on the business and not in the business, all the cliches, working smarter, not harder. Yeah. It is all the cliches, but it's totally true. And we need to do that. And I think I need to really, that's something I 100% need to do. But I'm thinking, oh no, like I've got this client stuff. Clients come first, always prioritize them. But then if you don't work on the stuff that your business is failing in, like your processes, then you're never going to do as good a job for your clients. And I think that's what people got to realize. You need to take time out to work on your business, improve that, and then everything else will just fit better in. But it's so difficult 100%. When everyone's like, we have no time. And so that I guess leads me on to what you do. You help people with their productivity. And you know, what exactly do you do to help people become more productive?
Yeah. So like I said, it really is that systems audit, that time audit, like really figuring out what's working, what's not working, ways that we can figure out how to filter stuff out that they shouldn't even be working on if it doesn't fit into their plan. So I really do kind of help them recenter and be like, okay, why did you start this business? And like, what are your goals? Because that's where we've got to start. They're like, oh, I don't have time for that. Like, just make me more productive. And I'm like, yeah, but I can put in systems for you, and they're not going to help you long-term if I don't know what those are. So we kind of start there, recalibrate. And then we're like, okay, how can we optimize this? How can we get rid of software? How can we condense things into one place? How can we manage our time better and time block better? So we're really optimizing and seeing where we can make improvements. And then the next step is the automation. So it's like, okay, we've got things optimized. How can we then go in and see what we can automate? Like, what can we take off your plate with tools like Zapier or any kind of email automations or things like that? And then the last step in my process is really to document the processes so that we can delegate the processes, because we don't need to be the ones that are doing everything. Once we've optimized it and automated it, now I can say, okay, instead of me onboarding a client, my assistant can onboard them. And then I'm just ready to do the work, right? But if you don't have that documented and you don't have a process for them to follow, you can't give them work to do, which means you're continually going to be busy and you're never going to stop, right? So really walking them through that process and obviously like implementing and setting up systems for them. So setting up Asana, setting up a CRM, setting up client onboarding types of things. But it really is, it starts with that big picture and that holistic view, because I don't just want to give them a Band-Aid solution. It's got to be ready to be growth oriented. So
I think one of the most amazing things you just said there was the delegate bit. And I think that's it, like creating models that are sustainable no matter who is there. And like, you know, I think the biggest problem I find with small businesses, and mine included, is that the business owner is the most important person in the business and it's basically them. And without them, the business just doesn't exist and doesn't work. And that is not a sustainable business. And so I feel like everything that you do to try and create a business that's going to last is that exactly that, like creating a system, like I said, creating processes that you can pass on to someone else to just take over your role and do it, and it still work when you're not there. So you can take that well-deserved holiday and lie on a beach and know that your business is going. That's the dream. I mean, that just doesn't happen yet with me. Every holiday I take, I'm doing work, but it's the dream. It will happen one day, and maybe I need to have a conversation with you first. But I love the automations thing as well, because so let's talk specifics, because now I want to go into the actual specifics of the automation. So for those who don't really care, switch off now, but I am very keen. I want to hear the actual names of everything we do, because automation is so perfect if it can be done properly. What I hate is the depersonalization of things. Like we are such a personal agency. We don't want to come across like it is a bot, you know, responding to you. But automation isn't that, especially these days with AI and everything out there. But it's not even that it's automation in terms of bots doing it. It's just you pre-doing it and, you know, saving time by it doing automatically. So run me through, I guess, some of the most important or time-saving automations that you do, and what do you use? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing I will say is do not try to automate a broken process. It will end in disaster. So that's why I always have people optimize their processes and make sure it works well before we try to automate. Most people are like, oh, just tell me what to automate. Like, I'll just automate it. It's fine. I'm like, if you automate a broken process, it's going to create more work than if you were to just do it manually. So first off, we're going to throw that out there. So really the first step to it is mapping out the process and optimizing it. The second step really would then be to basically figure out where, right? So where can we automate things? So one thing for me is I actually have a proposal software that as soon as somebody signs off on that, it will create a Google Drive folder for me with all the subfolders within it. So it doesn't have to be big tasks that you're automating, but that is a time suck, right? I have to go create the folder and create subfolders. So I have that automation. Automations can also be templates that you can just copy and paste with a click versus like reinventing the wheel. So we have an entire client onboarding template inside of Asana that every time we get a new client, we just duplicate it. I like to tell people with templates, you want to make them as robust as possible with every single case scenario that you would do with a client, and then delete pieces that you're not going to use specific to that client, because then you're not having to constantly add things to it. So that's one of my favorite automations is as soon as somebody signs and pays, It'll automatically create their folder, automatically create their project. We actually don't have automated emails go out because I do like to do that onboarding process with them, like kind of like initial welcome, but we could, right? Like we could set that up. So I would say as many client facing things that you can make automated, that's easy for them, it's going to be huge. So really that like lead to proposal process. There's so many tools out there, right? Like so many. I use Zapier for that, for those connections. I have FG Funnels that does some of my automation stuff. I've got, I'm trying to think what some of them are in the back end. And the thing is too, sometimes you don't need the automation once you've streamlined the process.
Right. That's
a lot of times you streamline it and you're like, oh, cool, this is done. Like I don't need to create things for it. But yeah, I have a lot of things zapped into different softwares if there's no like automatic connection point. It really just depends. There's so many different, I could go in like 1,000 directions with this.
I feel like Zapier is like the king of automation though. That is like, you've just picked the one that is like up there at the top, and I feel like a lot of people will be really intimidated by it because there's so many possibilities with Zapier. You can just do everything. But the templates on Asana are cool. I think it's Templana. I think there's actually something called a Templana, I think, which is basically like templates for Asana. I've definitely downloaded a few of that, which is really cool. Yeah. We do, I guess, email automation for clients via Mailchimp. So so that would like, so Mailchimp is great as a CRM, as an email marketing software. It's fantastic to create landing pages. It can do a ton of stuff, and Mailchimp's fantastic because it has this drag and drop function. So if you don't have a designer or an HTML coder to do the newsletters, you can do that. You can manage your CRM, see when people opened it, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's great, especially for e-commerce websites.
Yeah, we actually, so our Hustle to Flow group coaching mastermind has all of that in place. So somebody can purchase from the sales page. It's in Kartra right now. We're in the process of moving it over to FG Funnels, but so they can essentially purchase from the sales page. They get a thank you page. It tells them the next steps. They get that welcome email. They get dropped into a year-long email sequence. They get added to the membership to get the portal. But again, setting up the actual tech is not the hard part. Everyone thinks the tech is the hard part. It is figuring out the optimized process to apply the tech to that is actually the hard part. So don't let Zapier scare you. Like once you have that process nailed down, it is very like user-friendly, like which software is it coming from? What are you doing? Which software is it going to? It's pretty simple as far as setting things up. It's figuring out the process. It's the hard part.
I totally agree. I spent like ages in our boardroom, like big pens and it's like flow charts and like
that's my jam. Like I basically could take the like 1,000 pieces of the puzzle of your business, and like you can scatter them all over the ground, and then I put them all into place and make it this like beautiful picture. I live for that.
That sounds
all amazing. The workflow charts, all the things.
That sounds amazing. I mean, like you were definitely so needed for small businesses, but I don't think they get that how much that is important. And I think that's the thing. Like you're so distracted by everything at the beginning when you're running your business. You're trying to do like finances, legal, HR, like all these things. And I think that processes are probably one of the most important things, because without that, everything else falls apart, which is crazy. But I wanted to just check because, everyone talks about productivity and like everyone bangs on about productivity. It's such a buzz thing and everyone's got their own productivity hacks. So what makes yours stand out? What makes yours better than all the other millions of people claiming that they've got the best productivity hack? What makes you better?
For sure. So I've kind of touched on these things, but I really do have a holistic approach to productivity. I think that really the end goal of productivity is to live meaningful, impactful life and not work yourself to death, right? Like that is the end goal, is to have this life you've created and have work-life balance. So I really do have this holistic approach where I see a lot of people in the productivity space, like giving people more apps and more systems and more different things to download. And my approach is less. Like I am almost like a productivity minimalist. I'm like, I want you to delete as many apps as possible, delete all the bookmarks. I want you to combine your systems into one, because that is really what is the power is in the simplicity, honestly. So I have this whole days by design method where we dive into the lifestyle by design first, and we map that out on the calendar, and then we fit business into your lifestyle. And I think a lot of productivity people, it's business first. And that, especially as mom, I'm a mom of twins, like the lifestyle stuff comes first, and that's why I'm doing it. So I've got to make sure I'm making time for that. So I really think it's just the minimalistic, holistic approach to business and productivity that makes me different than a lot of productivity gurus. And a lot of them are men. So I'm like breaking into the woman's space.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, less is more, and less is totally more most of the time. So I think I like that. So if you had to just pick, let's say 5 top productivity tips for entrepreneurs, and I'm making you only pick 5. I know that you love this and you can talk about it for all day, but if you had to pick 5 based on, like, you know, you've seen so many small business owners, like, you know, screw up their businesses and be all panicky, in order to have the best work-life balance and, you know, to be the less stressed and be the most productive, what would be the top 5 if you had to narrow it down?
Okay, so the first one, you have to have an organized digital workspace. So this is your Google Chrome, Safari, whatever you're using. I'm a Chrome fan because it gives you the most flexibility, but your bookmarks need to be organized, your extensions need to be organized, and it needs to be synced on all of your devices so you have access to everything everywhere. I see a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, I work on my laptop and my desktop and my phone, and like I saved that there and now I don't have access here. Like, you need to have access to everything you need anytime you log into your computer. I like to tell people, if every one of my devices died right now, I could go log on to Google Chrome on someone else's computer and have access to every one of my bookmarks, all of my files, all of my emails, all of my passwords. Like, literally, I could run my business on someone else's device, right? So having that organized digital workspace, install LastPass. For the love of everything, install LastPass. Like, I don't know how people survive without LastPass. It's a game changer. It saves all your passwords under a super secure vault, and it saves you from going down that reset password rabbit hole where you're like, reset password, you go to your email, you get distracted, you don't reset it, and then you do it again.
And how much time does that actually soak up each time? Oh my God. Like, if you added up,
it's got to be at least 2 minutes, at least. And that's if you don't get distracted in your email.
Yeah. And if it actually comes through the first time, and then you have 2-factor authentication, you have to wait for the text message, which never comes through. And then we'll go 2 at a minimum. And most people have at least 15 softwares to run their business. So that's like a 30-minute thing if you don't have that. So go install LastPass. If that's the only thing you do after today, I will be fine with that. Third thing, and we've kind of touched on this, but just, you have to have an all-in-one hub, a centralized location for all of your tasks. And this is business and personal. I literally run my entire business and life out of Asana and Google Calendar. Like, if it's not in there, it ain't happening. Like, if it is not telling me to do the thing in those 2 places, it's not going to happen. So really simplifying all of your tasks and client work and projects and business stuff all into one hub. Setting yourself a reoccurring task to do a time audit every single quarter, at least every single quarter. Honestly, probably every month. And audit your time for just a couple days, and you can see where you've got holes in your productivity every time. And then the biggest thing, I think, is just building a filter and saying no to the things that do not fit into your plan, things that are not needle movers, things that are not, like, we all say yes to way too much stuff and we overcommit. And then we look at our calendar and we get stressed out, and it's just this, it's constant. And then we have information overload. Like, you basically need to live in your own little bubble and like bounce stuff off. You're like, nope, can't do that. Deleting that, unsubscribing from this. Like, we have got to have a better filter to be able to manage our time better. So, yeah, those would be my top 5, but go install LastPass. Like, legit, you'll save yourself 30 minutes a day. That last one though, it's so funny. I don't know if you've ever read any of like Tim Ferriss's books, but you know, I don't know. So Tim Ferriss is obviously
I read the 4-Hour Work Week like a long time ago. I should probably revisit now that I'm in this space. It's
funny because that's the one I'm like least keen on, because I think I'm very cynical about it, but I'm gonna reread that with an open mind because I've read some of his other stuff now, which I really like. So there's 2 really kind of heavy books, but they're bulky books, but they're great value. So Tools for Titans and Tribe of Mentors. And essentially what they are, like, do you know what? Go on audiobooks. go get an audio, because it's like 18 and a half hours of good listen. But like, if you have like a commute or you're going to something or like going for a walk, it's kind of inspiring when you're on like this power walk or whatever, and you kind of go clearing your head. So I've listened to him on a walk, and it's just basically he interviews loads of really successful business people, and maybe not just business per se, but like, you know, successful people in life, in their respective fields, and how they got successful. And like, for example, Tools for Titans is that, and they explain exactly what they've used to become successful, and Tribe of Mentors, same sort of thing. And I basically, from these books, I listen to the advice and the feedback from all these hugely inspirational people. And I think the most common two things, I'm summarizing the books now in like 2 sentences. But the common two things are, first one, get more sleep, get quality sleep, which is everyone says. But the second one is what you just said, is, and I hear the sleep thing all the time, fine. But the second one, I didn't actually hear it before hearing this, and it's say no more. Every single person said that was one of the biggest revolutions, you know, that I did. And it was that I could say no more to things, like to opportunities. And you know, when you're a business owner, I feel like personal branding is such a big thing, and everyone bangs on about it. And you know, you feel like you need to say yes to every opportunity because it's going to help your personal brand, it's going to help your marketing, it's like good for this, or you know, you feel like you want to give back to communities and do things, and you just feel obliged. And I guess it's like, I don't know if it's like this over there, but as British people, we feel like it's very difficult. It's not polite to say no to people. And that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm being rude. If someone offers me this really great opportunity, I'm like,
I'm from the Midwest, so I'm from London, Ohio, so we're London to London here. So we're from the Midwest, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I can't say no. Like, I've got to like show up and like do the things. But honestly, that was the biggest thing that allowed me to scale to 6 figures and then continue to hit that, is saying no. But again, it goes back to that big picture plan, right? If you don't know what that plan is, you don't know what you should say yes and no to. So I revisit that plan so freaking often. It's insane, because I'm like, okay, does this fit the plan? Can it get me closer? Is it something that is just distracting me? Because honestly, everything you put on your calendar has 3 pieces. It's got the preparation, the actual thing, and then the debrief and like what happens after. So you have to think about that when you're putting that on your calendar. How much time is that actually going to take? Is it taking you away from things? And it's helped me, and it's a hard filter to build, trust me. And you have to like continually, it's a muscle. You have to continually work on it. But when you start saying no to stuff, the right stuff starts coming through. So
I need to definitely work on it. I'm really, really bad at it. But have you read another good productivity book called The One Thing?
I haven't read it, but I have a feeling I would love it, because obviously I'm like this minimalist entrepreneur. So it's like the very specific one thing. I was trying
to find it on my bookshelf, and I found it. The One Thing. You can see it's pretty read. I've actually properly read it. So Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, The One Thing. And so again, the premise is, what is the one thing you should do every day to help you get closer to your goal, which is the same sort of thing you've been saying as well, right? It's like, if you don't know your goal, how do you know what that one thing is? So everyone has this massive to-do list that just go on and on and on. But if you could create one thing each day that you could get done, that you think, right, if I could get that one thing done today and that's it, I'd be happy because it's got me closer to that goal. So if some of the things land on your desk, you have to think about that bigger goal picture. And if it isn't going to help you, then you shouldn't be doing that one thing. And I think that's what's really important. And I think people, you know, I feel like entrepreneurs, like, we know this stuff. Like we read this. When I read business books, I'm just like, yeah, I know this. But then I'm feeling like I know it all, but I need to hear it. So that's why I read them, because I'm just like, oh.
But that's the thing too, is we take in so much information and it's all conflicting. Like, everyone has different opinions on all the subjects about every single thing. You could do this in productivity, but don't do this. Like, everybody has conflicting advice. So with that filter, you also have to like stop taking in all the information too. There's so many, I have a couple students of mine. I was like, please, for the love of everything, stop listening to podcasts for a month, like just a month. Like, we have to test it. And I'm a podcaster. I have a podcast. So like, I'm not doing this for my benefit. I'm like,
and listeners, don't listen to her.
Yeah. Right. I'm like, you just have to stop for a month and just use the time that you were doing that to implement this stuff, because you're not implementing. It's one thing if you're listening, absorbing the information, and then actually implementing. But so often I see entrepreneurs just get stuck in information overload, and then they're listening to all this conflicting advice. They're like, I don't know what to do. She told me to go get Asana. She told me to go get ClickUp. Like, and it's just too much. And you have to at some point have that filter to say like, okay, this is my one thing. This is what I'm working towards. This doesn't fit. I'm unsubscribing from this list because it doesn't provide value. Like, you just have to get to that point to be able to not be overwhelmed, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed.
So how do you deal with entrepreneurs like that? Like, for example, I feel like I know what I should be doing, but I still don't do it because I feel like I need to do this other thing, which seems more important. And, so say if like I was your client, God forbid that, for your sake, but, say if I was your client and I'm like, right, I've got these systems in place. I know I should be doing this. I'm going to go get this done, but then I don't. And I feel like, I know what I should be doing. Yeah. But I just can't get myself to do it because I feel like I'm prioritizing other things because I feel like they are more important. Like, what advice would you give me if that was the situation?
Yeah, it really is going through that days by design and figuring out, like, I have a whole method within the lifestyle of like, what are those most important things within these 6 categories. Within business, I break it into my BCO method, which happens to be my branding, but business development, client services, and operations. Those are the 3 areas every business has. So it's really going through and time blocking for the family and the business, or the family and the lifestyle side, and then the business side, and figuring out what we can cut out, and then creating routines. And productivity is so personal because I could hand you an entire system, and if it doesn't work for you, you're not going to use it. And it's going to be something you're like, oh, I'll do that later. I'm just going to put that on the back burner. So when I work with my clients one-on-one, at least, it's a very personalized approach using my methods and systems, but tweaking it in a way that will actually work for them and their work style, and maybe even like their human design style. Like, there's so many factors personality-wise that goes into productivity that it really is just doing that full-on audit with them and creating something that will work for how they work.
You just mentioned that buzzword again, the routine that everyone says, like, everyone's like, you need a routine. That's the other one, like, get a routine. And I'm just like, oh man. But like, part of being an entrepreneur is that I like the mix up. I like every day to be different. That is it. I chose to leave a normal job because it was the same routine. But yeah, I get where they're going with it. You need to kind of have certain things set in stone. So it's done on autopilot. So, how important is a routine? And like, what does a routine look like? Because obviously everyone's so different. That's what people got to realize. I hate the people preaching, go, you must get up at 5 a.m. and you must start off with this yoga and you must start off with your journaling and meditating and manifesting. I'm like, no, I'm not doing anything. So like, it's just like, I can't deal with any of that. So that wouldn't work for me. But I get that a routine has its benefits. Like, how important have you seen routines, and like, what does that look like in your clients?
Yeah, for sure. So I think when you're thinking about routines, like, the end goal is why are you wanting to even create a routine? So like, what is the outcome you're trying to create? And then really brainstorming, okay, if I want that outcome, what are the things I need to do to get there? But then you have to make it fit your lifestyle. Like me, I am not getting up at 5 a.m. It's not happening. I'm not working out at 5 a.m. I have kids that I have to get off to school. Like, it's just not happening. But one routine I've put in place is, because I don't do that in the morning, I have it's my 3 Ps of productivity at the end of the day that completely like recaps the day and resets before I go to the next day. And that is almost like my reverse morning routine, because it's getting me ready for the next day, even though it's the end of this day. So I do think that they're important. I do think they have to be personalized. Like, if you're a morning person and not a night person, like, don't try and cram a routine in at night, right? Like, you have to know yourself. But I think they're important to a degree. I time block differently than people. A lot of people are like, oh, like, put your specific things that you're working on. That doesn't freaking work for entrepreneurs. I actually time block in the BCO methods as well. So I block off a half a day for client stuff. I block off a half a day for operation stuff. I block off half a day for business development, because then I can focus in those areas, but then do lots of different things within that area. But when you try and do like bookkeeping and HR and finances, and then you're like, oh, let me switch over to marketing and creating graphics and like all of this stuff, and then you're like, now let me go do some client work. like the break in productivity is a killer there, like bouncing into those 3 different buckets. So again, it has to be personal, but figuring out what those things are that work for you and what the outcome is that you're wanting to get from a routine. Because if you don't have an outcome that you want, like, do you actually need that routine, or are you just doing it because everybody says so? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes back to the filter, right? Like, so-and-so told me I had to have this. And I'm like, but do you? Like, do you actually need that?
But those blocks of time, do you like mute your notifications? Like, what else? Because I feel like, again, as an entrepreneur, like you said, there are hundreds of emails coming in while you're trying to get those things done. There are staff members who need your help. There are clients who are calling you. There are other distractions that are going on. How do you stay focused and actually get what needs to be done during that actual time block?
Absolutely. So I turn off my email, like shut that down, because it's one of the biggest distractors. But I've done so many experiments where I've shut it down for 6 hours and I come back and like, nothing was crucial. Like nothing was crucial. Right. And this comes to, you have to set boundaries with your clients and your team too. Like you've got to have those boundaries, those communication tools in place. But definitely shutting off email. I don't have notifications on anything basically, except for like texts and phone calls. Because again, on your phone, right, that little red dot, you're like, oh, I got to check it. I got to look at it. Never important, never, ever. And it's still there when you click it, even if the red dot's not there. So no notifications, no email. It is hard. It's hard. Like it's not an easy thing to do because there's a lot of like, when you're working on client work, you're like, oh, I have this idea to do this. But again, you've got to like find a way to put it on the back burner or put it in your hub as an idea to come back to later instead of like, let me go fix that or do that thing right now. So I have an issues list in Asana where if like I come across something that's broken or that I need to do or whatever, I'll like drop a task in really fast and then go back to what I was doing instead of like, oh, that link's broke. Let me go fix that. Let me go. And then you go down the rabbit hole. So, it's setting boundaries. Notifications is huge, and really just like sitting down to focus and not having as many tabs open. Those are the only tips I can give that are tangible. The rest of it's kind of like habit and just really having that filter and that bubble around you.
So what's your routine like then? Because you said you have an evening routine. Yeah. I want to hear what this is.
Yeah. Okay. So my famous 3 Ps of productivity. So it's process, plan, and prepare. So basically I take all of my notes on GoodNotes on my iPad. And the processing piece of this for me is I basically scroll back through all the notes I've taken from clients and meetings and calls, and anything I've put a star next to or like action items, I make sure those go into Asana. If it's a calendar item, I make sure it goes into the calendar. If there's something that I need to do for follow-up, like basically I take anything that has action to it and put it in Asana where it needs to go. So I'm processing the day, and that really helps me like shut my brain off and make sure I'm not forgetting things. So then the next piece is planning. So I plan for my week on Fridays, but we all know Monday comes and that plan goes to shit.
Yeah.
So I plan for the week, but then like on Monday at the end of the day, I will basically recalibrate that plan and make sure I look at the calendar. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the meetings I have. I make sure there's buffer time. And then I look at my tasks and basically say like, where are those tasks going to fit in between those meetings? And if they don't fit, how can I shift them? So I'm essentially laying out the roadmap for the next day. And then prepare sounds a lot like plan, but it's honestly me getting any materials ready that I need to execute the plan. So if I'm recording a podcast, I make sure I have the outline. If I have a client call, I make sure I have their notes up and I have bullet points of what we're talking about. If I'm doing, I don't even know, like so many things, right? But I'm basically preparing all the stuff I need so that when I hit the ground running the next day, if the kids are late or we have a delay for school or like, I don't even know, XYZ, right? I can still sit down at my computer and I have a plan. Because I saw so many entrepreneurs, myself included, they would sit down at 9 a.m. They're like, what do I do? What do I work on? And then it's like information overload. And like your team needs you. Here's emails and here's text. And then it's 2:00 and you're like, I literally got nothing done.
Yeah. That happens
What is
every day.
with my life.
It's like, I feel like every day, like I'm doing so much, but yet getting nothing done. And it's like, how is that possible?
So 3 Ps, I'm telling you, was a freaking game changer in my business because I was processing what happened. I was able to shut it off and I had a plan before I even went into the next day. So I could literally sit down and like hit the ground running. Now, does that still like go awry sometimes? Absolutely. Like stuff pops in, whatever. That's where boundaries and filters and notifications, like so many things come into play. But that alone, stuff stopped slipping through the cracks because I kept forgetting about stuff that I wrote down and then did nothing with, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to actually sit down and know what I was working on versus going into it completely blind. So I honestly think that was probably what got me to 6 figures so quickly.
That's amazing. I feel like, so it's funny because I use Asana and I love it too. But I still have a productivity planner notebook. Like I love it.
Yeah.
So I have the Intelligent Change one. I don't know if you guys have that over there, but I love it. IntelligentChange.com, productivity planner. Like any listeners who want a discount code, hit me up. I can sort you out. But I actually just love them because that I still, even though we're a digital agency and this is what we do, we digitalize everything. We use Asana 100%, but the reason why I love this particular planner is not only does it have every day an inspirational quote, so it kind of like, lets you soak that in, which I love, but it does that one thing. So it gives you, for example, your week goals and makes you think ahead about your weekly goals. And then it asks you, what is your one thing for today that if you were happy that you got done, what is it? And it makes you think that. So every day you write it there, and then what are the next tasks and what are the next tasks, and then it has that Pomodoro technique, where you like do 25 minutes at a time, and it makes you like circle them and you can see and you predict how long you think it's going to be, and then you actually write how, and you can just, and it makes you reflect. It's like a planner and self-reflection guide in one. And so then I'm like, okay, so I thought it was going to take 3 times 25 minutes, but it took 8. What?
Right.
It's like, so
that's the number one rule is everything takes so much longer than you think it will. If you think it's going to take 5 minutes, it's going to take an hour. Like that's just how it works.
Exactly.
And if you're unorganized and have no systems, it's going to take longer than that because you're not going to be able to find it. So literally everything that you do, just plan on at least double.
And so I think it's great because it makes you then reflect and you think, why that took so much longer? Why? And then at the end of the day, it asks you to rate your own productivity out of 10, which I love too. And then sometimes I forget to use it. I'm like, I wasn't productive today. Why? I was all over the place. That's why. So actually, I still need it. I still love the old school writing. And I feel like
and I actually, so I use my iPad, and this is actually just like a notepad with check marks beside it. And when I plan out, I actually map out my appointments. So I'm like, 7 a.m., this is what I have. Here's this. And then I go in and fill in the tasks between it, because then I can kind of see like the full picture. But I love the like quote piece to that. What I've found with most planners is I like so many pieces of that. I just need to create my own, basically. Like,
you should. That is exactly what you should be doing. Because I have a friend as well. Her one is amazing, but it's way bulkier because it's got so much value in it. So she's got like everything to do with your whole life. So she's got finances, your personal life, and everything. And she's got wellness. And she created that because she's like, that's what her jam was. And she found that she couldn't work with other planners. And so she did that. So again, shout out to her. She's amazing. She's actually on a podcast episode. She's number, I'm going to get this wrong now. She's number 4, I'd say. Rosemary Akeem, her name is, and she does mind map, MYND map. I love it because it's like my mind map. So she's amazing journal as well. So I leave that one here because it's quite a bulky thing, and it's like, but it's got coloring, it's therapeutic. I just love it. So journals are great. I think they are so much fun, and they've definitely helped my productivity. But I feel like this last 45 minutes or whatever has been like some of the most productive time I've used in that whole kind of paradoxical thing. Again, I've used that 45 minutes of my time, but I feel like the knowledge I've got from you has made me gain hours of my life, which is amazing. So I feel like, to all the listeners who are thinking, right, how the hell do I get in touch with her? Because I need her in my life. How do listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I hang out on Instagram and then in my community the most. So Instagram is brittanyandco.consulting for my handle. And then the community is the productivitypodcommunity.co. We actually host it on Mighty Networks. It's very similar to a Facebook group. But Facebook's real distracting. So I got people on a different platform. And we do so much fun stuff. We have a happy hour every month. We do an office hours where you can pick my brain completely free. We also have a coffee chat so members can connect. And there's a DMing function in there. So we really are just on a mission to help people reach that true end goal of productivity, which is like having a meaningful, impactful life and business, but not working 27 hours a day, right? So those are probably the two best places. And then our website's just bcohq.co.
Perfect. So I'm going to put all those links in the show notes so that everyone can hit you up. But thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
And thanks everyone who's been listening. And if you love the show, please do support us by leaving a review and just telling us what you think. And we'll be back next week for another episode of No Bullshit Talks.